of the slain soldiers' bodies in Dover, Delaware on Friday. And that is where we start this hour with founder of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America and host of the Independent Americans podcast, Paul Rieckhoff. Also joining us, the CEO of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, Allison Jaslow, is here. And writer-at-large for The Bulwark and MSNBC political analyst, Tim Miller. Paul, no parent wants to receive that call. Talk to me about what we watched, the importance of the way that President Biden comported himself on that call.
What that family is experiencing is unimaginable. But Joe Biden's one of the rare people that can kind of imagine it. You know, he's at his best when the moments are at their darkest. He's been a consoler-in-chief for this country since before he was president, but he's also the only commander-in-chief we've had since 9/11 that had a child in combat. Bo is in combat. He knows what it's like to watch the news and fear the worst, and he knows what it's like to fear that call. So I think in this very harsh and horrible moment, he can connect with them in a personal way that no president has done since 9/11. And you can see that on the faces of the family. They know he knows what it's like, and that's incredibly powerful.
And he also put context, right? The idea of 1% that protects the 99% of us.
Yeah, and that's what it's been for over 20 years. It's been a small group of people continuing to sacrifice over and over again. And now it's going to beg the difficult policy question, which is, why were they killed? What happens next? What's going to be the response? And that's going to be an even more difficult task. And now it's forced upon him that he's got to have a conversation with the American people, maybe in a more strategic way, about Iran. How is Iran involved, and how are we going to hope to achieve some kind of justice for that family and for others?
Your point about understanding sacrifice and the way that can come from lived experience, it can come from a reverence for the institution or an absence thereof.
Yeah, I first met Joe Biden over 20 years ago when he was a senator, and we knew he cared. I spent a day at Arlington with then Vice President Biden and a group of other people, and I remember having a conversation with him and Jill Biden. I mean, they get it. They understand it. They've been there. They've been there for a long time. And I think you can criticize President Biden in a lot of ways, but he's a good man. And anyone who's been around him, who's been in a room, especially in the difficult situations, understand he's a man of character. And that is what I think sets him apart from his competition in this presidential race. And I think it's one of his most important attributes and one of America's most important attributes. He represents the best of us in that moment, when he's compassionate, when he shows his integrity, and when he really cares.
You alluded to the decisions that are forthcoming for this administration, and I wonder if the stakes being as high as they are, if it crystallizes in the eyes of service members, of their families, the decision, which is we often think about the President of the United States as in his legislative capacity as overseeing Congress, but when you think about specifically the role of commander-in-chief, I have to imagine that moments like this just make it that much sharper.
I hope so. I mean, it's a clear differentiator. I mean, you need a commander-in-chief who has character, who has integrity, who cares about people, who has some strategic vision, who can bring people together, not a national security threat that's an egomaniac and a threat to the global security. I mean, there's a very clear contrast here, and maybe people will come back to that in this moment, and I think they should. I think especially independent voters that I talk to a lot are looking for integrity and character and stability, and I think these are the type of moments that can influence a couple hundred, couple thousand people that may go one way toward Biden when they were thinking about going in another direction when November comes.